Hi everyone.
I am Kelly Turner with Total Mortgage.
And I am Sanam Solati Yurczyk with New England Prestige Realty.
And what are we talking about today, Sanam?
So today we're going to talk about how you can pick your entire real estate team.
Yeah, I think it's a question that we get a lot because different people come into the process in different places. Sometimes they already have a realtor, sometimes they already have a lender, and it can be really hard to decide what professionals you're going to work with as a part of the process.
Yeah, and there's a whole team, right? There's a whole team of experts in order to get you from A to B throughout the transaction.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes when people come on board, they're either already working, like you said, with a mortgage broker or a realtor, and usually one or the other may recommend a referral partner that they feel comfortable working with. When it comes to mortgages, though, there's so much change.
Yeah.
Your industry baffles me. I don't even know how to keep up with you. Like, what are some things that buyers can do to help figure out and navigate who the best mortgage broker is for them?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people get really hung up on interest rate when they are choosing a lender, right? They go right, who has the lowest rate? And the problem with that mindset is that we sometimes say you pay for service, that sometimes the lowest interest rate does not equal the smoothest transaction, the easiest transaction, the fastest transaction. Sometimes it can though, and really what you need is you need trusted professionals. We generally recommend in a purchase market that you use a local lender that has name recognition and visibility in your marketplace. Why is that important? Because that can actually make a difference when you're making your offer with a listing agent. I often have listing agents call me when a buyer makes an offer to say like, oh, hey, Kelly, it's you. I was excited to see the letter from you, because they already know my reputation. Where when you are using those sort of nebulous online lenders, they tend to sometimes get a little squidgy because you, right, as an agent, you have had no name mortgages go south.
We have. And then oftentimes with the online companies, you call and you're transferred from this person to that person to this person to that person because they have
a call center.
Yeah. And it's really hard to get straight answers. And yeah, without having that local professional that you might run into to be held accountable for what happens, it's not so pleasant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something to remember about your mortgage professional is a couple of things to know. Number one, they get paid when you close, right? So when you're working with a small mortgage loan originator, which is what I am, we generally are getting paid when you close. So our goal is to get you to the closing table, where sometimes, again, when you're working with like big online places with banks, there's not really like a lot of incentive.
No, they're paid hourly or
whatever.
whatever.
Where if your loan runs into trouble, sometimes they go, and then they move on instead of really trying to work with you to make things happen. The other thing that does make a difference as well, and you definitely know this as a realtor, is availability, right? So sometimes bank loan officers, or again, online call center loan officers, they work like 9 to 5. You don't have their cell phone number. You don't really have a way to contact them. And Sanam, when does real estate happen?
Not 9 to 5.
Not 9 to 5. I will tell you, I send more pre-approvals Saturday night than any other time.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the buyers go out, they see a property they fall in love with, and they need a new pre-approval to match whatever price they're sending in.
Yeah, absolutely. So communication, interest rates, local availability, those are probably the big things to know. As far as like programs and stuff are concerned, generally lenders kind of have close to the same stuff.
They do. Not everyone does though. Some of the lenders are pigeonholed to like whatever program they're most comfortable with. And sometimes they're denied programs. Yep. And I know that we've sent people to you and you're like, no, you just had to go about it this way.
Yeah, and that does happen. And I would say that too, if you apply for a loan with a bank or an unfamiliar lender and you don't get an approval, you should definitely ask for some second opinions, unless the lender can give you really distinct reasons like credit score or things like that, why it's not going to work. But because different loan officers can, kind of look at things from a different angle and can sometimes get approvals that one loan officer maybe didn't think of that option.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so once you have your lender, right, you've picked your lender, sometimes again, the realtor comes first, sometimes the lender comes first, but it's time to pick a realtor. What sort of things should buyers be looking out for?
So a lot of people oftentimes think that, it's just how long a realtor has been in a business, and that doesn't necessarily correlate to being a really great agent. I think when you speak with your agent and you're interviewing them, whether you're buying a house or selling a house, is you want to understand how they operate. And there's no right or wrong, but there are some agents that operate as an individual. They don't operate, they operate as an individual, which means they are responsible to help you from transaction from beginning to closing, and they'll see you through the process all the way through. And then there are some that have a team. So you might think you're hiring a certain name, and maybe you meet with that person once, but then for this part of the transaction, you deal with this person. And for this part of the transaction, you deal with that person. Some people think that's a little bit more efficient. Some people don't like it because they feel like there's not that one person who understands the entire process and is held accountable the whole way through. So I think, it depends on what your comfort level is. And if you want to be dealing with one individual, if you get along with them and you love them and you're all on the same page, it would make sense. But if not, then, you can go through the assembly line, as I call it, in a team setting.
And I think communication for realtors is really not just with you, the borrower, but your realtor needs to be communicative. They need to be communicating with the lender, the attorney. They're your liaison. Like, that's what their job is.
Yeah.
So if you are having a hard time getting a hold of them at the beginning, scheduling appointments with them at the beginning, sometimes that can be indicative of someone who's hard to get a hold of, and it may trickle into the rest of your transaction.
Absolutely. It could hinder the whole transaction. Another thing that I would look for in an agent, in addition to communication, is what their reputation is within the real estate community. If you've heard certain things about this realtor and you get to know them, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but you want to see what their relationships are or what their belief system is with other agents, because the reality is, as a listing agent, I want to be friends with all my buyer's agent. As a buyer's agent, I want to be friends with all the listing agents, because at the end of the day, if I have a buyer that wants to buy and they have a seller that wants to sell, our job is to close that gap, not to get our egos involved, because oftentimes that happens. Also, if you find an agent that's just straight up telling you what to do rather than guiding you and educating you on why those choices might be smart choices, that could be a red flag.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing to also contemplate with both your lender and your realtor is style of communication and types of communication. Some borrowers want to text and text only.
That's it.
Some borrowers want to email and email only. Some borrowers are in person. Some people are a combination of the above. And you do just want to get an idea from your realtor of how are they comfortable communicating with you. It's sometimes where the how long you've been in the business does come into play in the wrong way, that we do occasionally get realtors that they want me to fax them things. And I say, I can fax you to 1987.
So I was just going to say, we haven't had a fax machine in I don't know how long.
And sometimes that's what people are looking for, And then I have some borrowers that are like, text me and text me only. If that is your style of communication, you want to make sure that works for your realtor, because some realtors would welcome it and some may not.
Yeah. And really, a good realtor is going to morph into whatever your needs are.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. All right. So we have a realtor, we have a lender.
Yes.
What other professionals do we need?
So now that we have a house under contract, if we're a buyer, we need to get our insurance all squared away, right?
Yeah, insurance. So that's generally something that I usually recommend for my buyers. Really, as soon as they go under contract, it is time to start shopping. They don't necessarily have to bind their insurance, and we'll talk about what that is. But it's time for them to start looking. A few myths in insurance. People sometimes think that they have to use the seller's insurance company. They do not. They think they have to use their parents' insurance company. They do not. They think that they have to use their current car insurance company.
I get that all the time.
They do not.
I've had my same car insurance for 10 years. And it doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything.
And it doesn't even mean you're going to get the best program.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's something, what behooves you as a client is to do a little research, to shop around. There are big insurance companies, there are small insurance companies, there's some with good reputations, some without good reputations. And it's a little bit to figure out what your needs are. I personally do love insurance brokers who have the ability to shop a couple of different companies for you, just because you will see that, unlike interest rates or cell phone bills, home insurance can vary enormously on price, and that can make a big impact on your monthly mortgage payment. I have seen the exact same house. One company, the policy was $1,200 a year, and the next company, the policy was $3,000 a year, and that makes a big difference for a borrower. So shop around, ask for referrals. So this is a great time to ask your lender or your realtor, do you work with an insurance company? Are they timely? Are they flexible? You know, what time frame should I be in? I have had issues where like we need an insurance binder to close and I am emailing again a call center because somebody went online and put a quote in and I don't have a real agent to talk to, and it's like a weekend. I'm like, haha, we're not gonna close.
Yeah, you literally can't close without that.
Yeah.
So I actually tell my clients, my buyer clients, to call their insurance agent as soon as they found the house that they like, because sometimes things may not be disclosed, such as is a property in a flood insurance
flood zone. Yes.
And sometimes, like we were talking about this before, the seller might have a mortgage on the property, and when they close on their mortgage, they may not have needed flood insurance, but FEMA may have come and done a redetermination, which would cause the next buyer to have to get flood insurance. And so that's something that can be easily missed. But if you, as a buyer, are calling your insurance agent to get a general idea, that will pop up immediately.
Yeah. And it's something where, as a lender, if FEMA says you were in a flood zone, we are required to collect you need to have flood insurance. There are some ways out of it with feasibility. There's a bunch of stuff that can be done.
Yeah,
a survey company, but generally it will not be done before you close. So you need to have it in place. It is not the mortgage company requiring it. It's really FEMA that requires it. Yeah. We just are acting on their behalf that you have to have it. And people sometimes get a little squidgy, like, well, how much is this going to cost? Sometimes flood insurance is very expensive. Down by the shore, it may be $20,000 a year. Sometimes I actually have a borrower currently under contract needing flood insurance. It's $400 a year. It's not a big deal. And her homeowner's insurance was actually cheaper than we thought it was going to be. So altogether, her flood and her homeowners are less than we estimated. So it's kind of not a big deal. But if it's required, it's required. We can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and then when you are comparison shopping insurance, if you are talking to multiple brokers, you want to shop, you want to compare the deductible versus like the actual coverage too. Because obviously the higher the deductible, the lower your monthly payments are going to be, but you want to compare what's actually being covered.
Yeah, it's kind of like health insurance, and it's something that's how I always describe it to borrowers. Now, one other last insurance tip is a lot of people ask about, well, I already have my car insurance with place A, but this homeowner's insurance is better. It is very common to bundle your car and home together. And truthfully, we kind of recommend it just for ease of payment, making sure that you always kind of know what you have. But that is generally where you will get the biggest cost savings is bundling those two things together. So it's not going to be abnormal that your insurance agent asks if you like to do it. They're not trying to steal your car insurance from another place. It really just helps with the overall policy package.
Absolutely.
It's cheaper.
Yeah, absolutely. So outside of your insurance, and all of these are kind of moving along quickly at the same time, simultaneously throughout the sale, but you also need a home inspector if you're a buyer.
Yes.
Because you want to inspect the property, right? And so when it comes to your home inspector, there's a lot of questions that you can ask outside of just pricing, because a lot of things on a home inspection are done a la carte. For example, like if you want to test for radon in the basement, like that's not part of the standard home inspection. That's an optional, inspected item. Yes. Same thing with wood destroying pests. That's an add-on. Some inspectors will look and they will give you information on that, but if you need an actual report, maybe because of your loan type, that's something that you might have to pay extra for. But you want to find out what's included with your home inspection and then what the add-ons are and what the pricing might be along with that. Another thing that's important for me, because typically as an agent, I want to know how quickly are we going to get those reports.
Because usually there's a time period built into your contract where your inspection must be complete and negotiations done by a certain date.
Exactly. So I want to make sure that we are going to get the report within the allotted time period that we have in our contracts. With that, it doesn't hurt to ask your inspector what type of reports you're going to receive. So I've seen some old school reports where it's like there's carbon copies and they rip off a page and you get it, versus the awesome reports that are online with pictures and videos.
Things pointed out.
Details. They really highlight like what you need to focus on from like an immediate standpoint, like what needs to be addressed. And so that's a good question to ask. Typically, if your agent is recommending the inspector, they are probably doing it because they've had good results with them. Another thing would be, what's their background?
Yeah. Did they come from a construction background, contractor? Is it just somebody who kind of decided they were going to do this? What's their background in building?
It's kind of nice to know because if you've had a previous builder or a previous town official that was in the building department or electrician or something, it's kind of nicer than having somebody that just got in it and maybe they were a librarian. I don't know, understanding what their background is.
Now, what happens if you have a home inspection and everything turns out fine, and then a month after you close, the hot water heater goes or the roof starts leaking? What do you do?
So those things happen. I mean, those are part of the risks, and things happen once you're a homeowner. There's homeowners maintenance that is required with everything. When a home inspector goes out and conducts their inspection, it is a snapshot in time. It's what the home looks like today while they're there. And they're only able to inspect what they can see. So if there's something hidden behind walls and they can't access it, technically they're not supposed to move stuff to access them for inspection purposes. But if they don't see it and it's not a problem at that time, they're just giving you a snapshot of what they saw at that time.
Yeah, they're not responsible necessarily for mechanicals going or things like that.
Exactly. Some inspectors actually do offer some supplemental warranties on items that they inspect. So that's also another question you can ask your inspector.
So we have a home inspector. What do we need now?
So we have to get to the closing, right? Somebody's got to pull title and do all that fun stuff. How do I choose a good attorney?
Ooh,
so because my uncle's an attorney.
Your uncle's an attorney. Your mom's friend is an attorney. That's very important to me as the lender. Okay, who your attorney is. Why? Well, the lender is the one who is generally communicating with the attorney the most in the transaction, mainly because we are, number one, all trying to work towards this closing date. So it's often us that are going back and forth, but the attorney is also the one who is pulling title, and title is essentially the chain of ownership on a home. It is a very important piece of the transaction, not because you care that, Sally Joe owned the house 4 owners ago, but you care that nobody is owed money based upon that property address. So there's no tax lien, there's no contractor lien, there's no money that is owed to anybody, because when you buy a house, you buy all the liens associated with the house unless you have title insurance.
So if you're getting a mortgage, you have to have title.
You have to have title insurance. So it's very important. Now, a couple of things to know about attorneys. Not all attorneys are created equal. There are attorneys who do just real estate. There's attorneys who do real estate in conjunction with other things. There are attorneys who do not do real estate, who sometimes dabble in real estate.
Stay away from them.
Stay away from them.
Stay away.
You really want an attorney who specializes in real estate in some capacity. Again, they may be practicing in other areas. It is very common for a real estate attorney to also be an estate planning attorney, or to sometimes be a litigator, or to sometimes be a landlord-tenant specialist.
And they those work hand in hand.
Yeah. Where it gets tricky is this is my family law attorney, or my divorce attorney, or my corporate law attorney who does happen to be an attorney. But why do we care? They, number one, may not have followed the TRIG guidelines, which is a guideline attorneys have to follow. So the lender, sometimes it's problematic for us. We can't always use them. Number two, they sometimes don't have the training or the resources to do things like pull title or have real estate paralegals. They occasionally are using outsourced third parties, and we tend to find those transactions are just a little stickier.
Think about it. Anytime you outsource anything, there's no true checks and balance system. Things always get missed.
Yeah. So, and the vast majority of closings kind of march right to the closing on time, but you do occasionally get those transactions where everybody's sliding right in there. Everything's being done at the last minute. And if you're working with an attorney that is not super experienced in real estate, some of those funky things that can happen at the end, tax adjustments, stuff like that, can get a little hairy. So we really want to be working with a real estate attorney, someone with real estate experience.
Yeah. And then another question that you might want to ask too is, if you are working with a real estate law firm and you've picked a certain attorney and you jive well together, are they physically going to be there at the closing table?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it could be a business partner, but if you want to work with them and that's important to you, that's something you can share.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's very important. So what's our last thing on our list? Appraisers.
Which we don't really have much control over, but it is a hot topic. So.
Well, and it's a topic that people ask a lot is, how do I pick my appraiser? You do not. You do not. So your lender is actually going to pick the appraiser for you. We do not choose them personally as loan officers. They're done through generally a third party. That way I can't have influence on them. You can't have influence on them. The buyer can't have influence on them. And a third party is the appraiser is essentially a third party that's going to assess the value of the home. It is of an opinion. The bank is generally bound to it though, but you do not have to worry about this professional. You do not pick them. They are not in your assignments as a buyer to worry about. So I mention it because I get asked that question a lot.
I think people get confused because oftentimes, like if somebody's going through a divorce or if there's like a probate issue or an estate thing, they will need an appraiser sometimes.
Which they may go get.
And they can hire. Yeah. And they can talk to them. And that's a little different than when you're going through a home purchase.
Absolutely.
People get confused.
They do. So that is kind of your main team. There may be other players associated. There might be contractors. Yeah. There might be other, kind of people working with you, but those are generally kind of the 6 key people who are going to help you buy a home.
And then also just like with your group, your team, because again, we all work together. We have to work well together. There are some professionals that will kind of take a small situation and blow it up. Mm-hmm. If you have a professional like that, you definitely don't want that.
Yeah.
Our job is to help minimize all the bumps because every real estate transaction has a whole bunch of bumps.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of turbulence and we just want to keep everything moving forward.
Yeah. I always describe it to my buyers that, listen, the mortgage process is not the fun part of buying a home. My goal is not to make it fun. My goal is to just make it smooth. That's my goal, and I think
I'll try to make it fun.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of the fun part. Let's be honest. It's fun to look at people's houses. It's fun to go to open houses. Handing over your bank statements to somebody, less fun. Yeah. More less fun. So I just want it to be smooth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And quick.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching.
Thank you. We hope to see you soon.
Yeah, and as Kelly always says, if you guys have any ideas, anything that you want to hear about, any topics, any questions, shoot them our way and we're happy to share it.
Thank you.
Thank you.